Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Cat, the Big Cat, actually. Today's another episode of the Safe Space Podcast. And in lieu of a couple things, in lieu of this week's Young Dolph shooting, as well as the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and not guilty verdict, I just wanted to jump right into this one. Today's episode, as well as the next few weeks' episodes, will all be covering the things that I believe plague the Black community. And I'm going to speak about the Black community because that's what I identify with. That's where I grew up. That's what or those are the people that I identify and resonate with the most. I still got love for all people, you know what I'm saying? Especially the ones who got love for all people. But when it comes to the issues that I'm going to discuss, I can only speak on my experience as well as the experience of my colleagues or peers. I want to start off by shouting out Fresh Custom EMB. I see I got the lead with Love hat on. Holla at them, man. They got hoodies, backpacks, T-shirts. You know what I'm saying? Like, show them some love. And they Black owned, so you got to show them some love. They got love for your boy Big Cat, so I always got love for them. I'll drop like their Instagram handle or something in like the description. I got y'all. Like I said, over the next few weeks, we'll be discussing things that plague the Black community in my way. I enjoy having this podcast and this platform because it gives me the opportunity to share my opinions and my views or others' opinions or views, all for the sake of conversation. This isn't about persuading anybody. This isn't about coercion or making you think the way that we think or I think. It's solely about having a conversation, which is something that in most communities, especially most Black communities, we have not done. So with that being said, the information included in these next few weeks' episodes come from a few different sources. So my first one, I'm just going to read this off verbatim. The first article, or one of the articles, is going to be the top 5 issues facing Black Americans, written by Talib Starks. I got some information published from the Mental Health of America, as well as an article written by Ashley Macielek. My apologies if you watch this and I mispronounced your name, but I'd love to have a conversation with you if that's the case. The article was published Tuesday, December 15th, based on the November 19th, 2020 event titled Breaking the Cycle, Overcoming the Challenges Faced by Black Boys and Men. The article is titled 6 Policies to Address Social Problems Affecting Black Boys and Men. So we're going to get into it today. Just know that, again, my opinions and reviews are based on my point of view. I will share them weekly. All right. I like to allow people to understand the why, the data, right? Because data is what typically drives us. Trends, statistics, that's all based on data. Gotta have my coffee, at least on these days. Let's see here. I'm going to start off by reading to you all the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Okay? So keep that in your mind. Again, if you don't know that, go ahead and read it up. But if you don't know, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution was adopted on July 9th, 1868 as one of the Reconstruction Amendments. Okay? Those are all consequential or, any amendment based on the Reconstruction amendments where they're known as like a result of consequential things that happen throughout history. And we all know that. You can do your research on that if you don't. From there, I'm going to jump into the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay. And this one, I'm going to give credit to the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor. There's a legal highlight here acknowledging the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I will read this verbatim. Okay. In the 1960s, Americans who knew only the potential of equal protection of the laws expected the president, the Congress, and the courts to fulfill the promise of the 14th Amendment. In response, all three branches of the federal government, as well as the public at large, debated a fundamental constitutional question. Does the Constitution's prohibition of denying equal protection always ban the use of racial, ethnic, or gender criteria in an attempt to bring social justice and social benefits? In June 1963, President John Kennedy asked Congress for a comprehensive civil rights bill induced by massive resistance to desegregation and the murder of Medgar Evers. After Kennedy's assassination in November, President Lyndon Johnson pressed hard with the support of Roy Wilkins and Clarence Mitchell to secure the bill's passage the following year. In 1964, Congress passed Public Law 88-352. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Provisions of the Civil Rights Act forbade discrimination on the basis of sex, as well as race in hiring, promoting, and firing. The act prohibited discrimination in public accommodations and federally funded programs. It also strengthened the enforcement of voting rights and the desegregation of schools. It goes on to say, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is the nation's benchmark civil rights legislation, and it continues to resonate in America. Passage of the act ended the application of Jim Crow laws, which had been upheld by the Supreme Court in the 1896 case, Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the court held that racial segregation purported to be separate but equal was constitutional. The Civil Rights Act was eventually expanded by Congress to strengthen enforcement of these fundamental civil rights. Now, reading that, if you don't know what the word purported means, to keep it simple, it means it was allowed. It was said to be true. It was alleged. So the Supreme Court in that particular case agreed that it was okay to separate us based on race. We were separate, but not equal. Let's see. Think about 1964. It's 2021. And that's only 57 years ago. Every single one of us knows someone that's 57 years old. I don't care if it's church, a teacher, parents in some people's case, grandparents, church folk. It doesn't matter. Like, we all know someone that's 57 or older. So I'm saying that to say there are many people that were affected by those Jim Crow laws or segregation laws, the fact that we weren't considered equal up until 1964. And still to this day, in some cases, we're still fighting, not necessarily segregation, but discrimination on many fronts. And it's not only Black people, so that's not what this is to say. But again, I can only go by what I identify with. One of the major things, even over the past couple of weeks, I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about Congress or how do we change, right? And one of the points made was we have to get all of the people in the House of Representatives and the Senate out that are, that have been making these laws for decades for us. And when you think about it, again, 57 years ago, there may be people in your House of Representatives or sitting within the Senate that agree with Jim Crow laws. I was talking to someone else and I made a very valid point. It's like, hey, you think about it. Some of those same people threw rocks at Ruby Bridges. If you don't know the story of Ruby Bridges, I really recommend you go look it up. If you're more of a person to watch a movie, you can even watch a Ruby Bridges movie. I know we all watched it in school coming up. Going back to the elderly people, the previous generation, all of the people that we know or may know personally that may have been affected by, discrimination laws and whatnot, or Jim Crow laws. There's a lot of trauma, that have come with these policies and procedures, from these people that considered us less than equal or not equal. And that kind of leads into the next generation, our generation, the generations that follow afterward. So with that, before I go deep into, I don't want to say attacking, but condemning the Black community about what we're still not doing to this day, I am a firm believer in explaining the POV from all sides. So I'm going to start off with some of the traumatic events that have faced us in more modern history since the Civil Rights Movement or the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The first one I want to discuss, my hometown, Detroit, Michigan. Okay. The 1967 Detroit Riot. This is in Wikipedia. So again, you could always research this. It states the 1967 Detroit Riot, also known as the Detroit Rebellion, and the 12th Street Riot, was the bloodiest incident in the long, hot summer of 1967. My dad was born in 1963 in Detroit. So, his older siblings, my aunts and whatnot, I'm going to have to reach out to them in regards to this because I really would love to see where they were, how it may have affected them and, what kind of was going on firsthand when all of this was happening. It says the riot was composed mainly of confrontations between Black residents and the Detroit Police Department. It began in the early morning hours of Sunday, July 23rd, 1967, in Detroit, Michigan. The precipitating event was a police raid of an unlicensed after-hours bar, then known as a Blind Pig, on the city's west side. It exploded into one of the deadliest and most destructive riots in American history, lasting 5 days and surpassing the scales of Detroit's 1943 Race Riot 24 years earlier. Governor George Romney ordered the Michigan Army National Guard into Detroit to help in the disturbance. President Lyndon Johnson sent in the United States Army's 82nd and 101st Airborne Division. That's wild. The result was 43 dead, 1,189 people were injured, and over 7,200 arrests and more than 400 buildings destroyed. So again, before I even go any further, and I really don't have to read more on this article, again, think about that, 1967. Some of y'all parents was around Detroit when this happened. Over the years, as people, we've been desensitized. But we've been taught to be desensitized, whether it be compartmentalizing, whether it be distracting yourself by other things. And I can only imagine, right, already being in a state, meaning like mentally or position to where you're in survival mode. We're dealing with discrimination, being called the N-word when people see us, being referred to as boy, being belittled by human beings. You take on top of that an event like this, and I can only imagine like the catastrophe, the actual visuals of these buildings burning, you know, whether it be like the water hoses, whatever it is, like there's just a lot that goes into trauma. And as a Black community, we don't get the opportunity to talk about that. I'll touch on that a little bit more. I'm going to keep going though, okay? Next, the 1985 MOVE bombing. This one I had never heard of. So when I started studying for this week's topic, this one really touched my heart. It really did. The 1985 MOVE bombing refers to the May 13th, 1985 incident in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When the Philadelphia Police Department bombed a residential home occupied by the militant Black group MOVE, and the Philadelphia Fire Department let the subsequent fire burn out of control following a standoff and firefight. A lawsuit in federal court found that the city used excessive force and violated constitutional rights against unreasonable search and seizure. 61 homes were burned to the ground over 2 city blocks. Okay. Just to refer to the incident as a whole, on Monday, May 13, 1985, nearly 500 police officers, along with city manager Leo Brooks, arrived in force and attempted to clear the building and execute the arrest warrants. Water and electricity were shut off in order to force MOVE members out of the house. Commissioner Sandberg read a long speech addressed to the MOVE members that started with, "Attention, MOVE. This is America. You have to abide by the laws of the United States." When the MOVE members did not respond, the police decided to forcibly remove the people who remained in the house, which consisted of 7 adults and 6 children. There was an armed standoff with police who lobbed tear gas canisters at the building. The MOVE members fired at them, and a gunfight with semi-automatic and automatic firearms ensued. Police used more than 10,000 rounds of ammunition before Commissioner Sandberg ordered that the compound be bombed. From a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter, Philadelphia Police Department Lieutenant Frank Powell proceeded to drop 2 one-pound bombs, which the police then referred to as entry devices made of FBI-supplied Tovex, a dynamite substitute, targeting a fortified bunker-like cubicle on the roof of the house. The ensuing fire killed 11 of the people in the house, 6 adults and 5 children. The name of those killed in the fire are as follows: John Africa, Rhonda Africa, Teresa Africa, Frank Africa, Conrad Africa, Tree Africa, Delisha Africa, Netta Africa, Little Phil Africa, Tomasa Africa, and Raymond Africa. The fire spread and eventually destroyed approximately 65 nearby houses. After the fire broke out, firefighters were held back, and the high-powered water cannons at their disposal, called squirts, were not turned on until 1.5 hours after the bomb was dropped. Mercy. Mayor Good later testified at a 1996 trial that he had ordered the fire to be put out only after the bunker had burned. Sandberg said he received the order, but the fire commissioner testified that he did not receive the order. Ramona Africa, one of the 2 MOVE survivors from the house, said that the police fired at those trying to escape. Wow. Now, you take that was 1985. We move on over the past few years, more modernized. We've got the Black Lives Matter protests following the murder of George Floyd, the civil unrest that came with the murder of Breonna Taylor. I call it a murder. Most recently, we talk about the Kenosha unrest, and so on and so forth. There are many things that have been presented throughout history that really have traumatized us as a nation, yet alone as a people. And it's sad. It hurts. It hurts to even read this. And it's crazy because, again, like, as human beings, we're taught, in a sense, I'm not going to say directly, but in a sense, we're taught to not value life. Death is a normal thing to the average American. Mourning is not warranted. Or even as far as like my community, again, we're going to stick to that, coming up. And I'm not saying my parents directly said this to me, so don't take it that way. But in a sense, yeah, boys don't cry. Boys don't show emotion. You want me to give you something to cry for? All of these things, especially during the critical ages of 1 through 7, or newborn through 7, they really shape and define how we move into adolescence and adulthood. And I really want someone to hear this and really take this into consideration, because a lot of us, we hold back ourselves from truly being successful and defeating the odds because of these stereotypical policies within the community. And as we get older, our situations change, our circumstances change, we grow, we deal with other trauma that leads to us getting therapy, whatever it is. You may just decide, I don't want the same anymore. Whatever it is, there are some of us that change. And I really wanted to do this, and I enjoy doing this because, again, it's okay. Like, it's okay to not want the same. It's okay to understand, like, when you get these feelings of anxiety and whatnot, it's normal. It's okay. Like, it's how we deal about it. It's how we deal with it when we're feeling that emotion that really defines how we make choices and how we make decisions. Which is one of the big things that I'll touch on, later. I don't know if it'll be in today's episode or later in the series, but actually, yeah, I'm going to jump into that before I jump into topic number 1. So me personally, I feel that for any of this to get better, we have to first make a decision that mindset that I just referred to, it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to show emotion. We have to get rid of that. We have to stop telling our children that. We have to stop parenting in that way, whether it be sports or whatnot. We, as a community, right, as a nation, as an ethnic group, we have to place more emphasis on the importance of identifying and understanding emotion. I personally feel like this generation, I don't know if y'all refer to it as Gen Z or Gen X, whatever it is, right? I'm 31. So the generation, the late 90s, early 2000s babies, the issue we have, or the issue we face, stems from there not being enough education on emotion. Think about it. The moment somebody gets into a fight, anger's there, yeah, but they're anxious. Sometimes people are even scared. And when you get in these modes, you tend to get a fight or flight mentality. And with the fight or flight mentality comes unreasonable decision making. Maybe even sometimes unconscious decision making. And with that comes the prison system, And I don't know if people know, but when you go to prison, you're no longer free. You're property of the United States prison system, of the government. So everything that we worked for, you just fall right back into the trap. It's like modern day slavery. What else we got here? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read from the article, 6 policies to address social problems affecting Black boys. Now, the policies, they're written in the order that Ashley saw fit, but I'm going to break them down And the first one I want to talk about is place-based policies. I'm going to read this verbatim, and then I'm going to give my opinion on it. In 2017, 26% of Black households lived in high poverty neighborhoods as compared to just 5% of white households. Excuse me. High poverty neighborhoods are typically characterized by poorer quality schools, less access to jobs, social networks and healthcare, and higher rates of crime, pollution, congestion, and noise. Moreover, evidence suggests that boys tend to be more sensitive to their environment growing up, which often materializes in behavioral issues, lower educational attainment, lower earnings, and more. Therefore, to address some of these adverse outcomes for Black boys and men, there should be greater investment in neighborhoods. Effectively designed and implemented place-based policies can improve the chances for Black men and their families, and ultimately restore communities. Using the Opportunity Zone model, these policies can provide neighborhoods with greater resources and invest money in areas that need it. But as Dr. Sean Joe noted, they need to better facilitate opportunity structures within the region and not for external factors, such as developers or whatnot. If you're from one of these communities that we're referring to, cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, and many other cities across this beautiful nation, we don't have the resources that other places have. It wasn't until I moved, to the suburbs that we had a recreational center where we could go to and play ball. In Detroit, yeah, you may have a Boys and Girls Club, but primarily you had the Coleman Young Center. There were no YMCAs, you know what I'm saying? Or we just had things that we did in our neighborhoods. That has to change. Kids need somewhere to go. I was watching a documentary on the Drew League for all the basketball fans, and they talked about, there were no local movie theaters. There were no local rec centers. And with that, that's how gangs get more involved. Your kids are just trying to find something to do. Kids will be kids. They're just trying to find something to do. And if a gang member shows you the love that you're not getting anywhere else, and they show you how to make a couple of dollars, again, you see your people struggling. You see your parents struggling. You can't buy the things that you want. So they become those influencers, those mentors, or so to speak, which is something else that we'll touch on. But with that being said, we have to change that. We talk about voting for the president. We talk about just naturally coming up, being naturally aligned to the Democratic Party. And this is not a political thing. So I'm saying that to make you think, why do I do what I do? Is it systemic that I'm actually voting Democrat? You know what I'm saying? Or even before that, before you even get to the presidential election, do you know who your city council members are? Do you know the aldermen that are claiming to be in your neighborhood? Do you know these people? Are you voting for these people? Have you went to city meetings, town halls? They happen. Whether or not you go to them, they're still going to go on. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that that's somewhere we've been lacking as a community and change it. I hear people complain about my HOA all the time. Oh, they're making all of these rules. When's the last time you took your time out on a Wednesday and went to a board meeting? It starts there. And I understand, we as people, we don't have a lot of time, but we have to make it. We have to. There's no way around it. We just have to make time. From there, talk about mentorship programs. And this will probably be the last one that we touch on today. It says mentorship programs such as the Mentoring Alliance led by Dr. Sean Joe for Black boys and men have been a vital part of strengthening connections within the community. Providing young Black boys with access to a Black male role model has the potential to benefit them across several areas, including academic performance, mental health, social and emotional well-being, and preventing risky behaviors. While mentorship programs should be promoted through public policy, the scholars emphasize that the approach must be deliberate. Specifically, Dr. Race Riot emphasized that mentors must exhibit 4 qualities: positive, academic, accessible, and visible. Black boys should be able to see and touch successful Black men. Richard Reeves added that they should be durable because mentors that come and go often do more harm than good. And finally, Dr. Sean Joe commented that there must be a shift away from saviorship to sponsorship. Black men must be willing to sponsor Black boys into opportunities, whether it be jobs, taking them on the volunteer events, showing them just a different aspect of life to really make a difference in their lives as a whole. I totally agree with this. And I myself had to check myself in regards to this because, again, going back to the whole time thing, same 24 hours in a day. You know, we dictate what we utilize our time for. And I challenge anybody that says that they don't have time to make a schedule. Make a schedule of everything it is that you do on a daily basis. Not everything you do on one particular day, but everything that you have to do on a daily basis. And then from there, we'll see how much time you actually have. And then you can dictate what you do with your time. Coming up, I had quite a few mentors, and I love every single one of my mentors, and I appreciate everything that anyone has ever done for me now. But I can tell you honestly, as a young Black man, when I was coming up, when I did have mentors and it wasn't consistent, it only put me into even more of a rage. My dad wasn't there. So naturally, you feel once you get this mentor, this man that's telling you like, oh, I'm going to help you here and there. We're going to do blah, 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 blah. When that's not on a consistent basis, or when it stops and you feel like you need it the most, it's traumatizing. And it, just like it states in the article, it makes things worse. So recently, you know, my little bro, I had to really acknowledge that. And I was transparent. You know, we've been going through some things at work where with COVID, we've been closed and or short staff. So you just, it's a tough thing to navigate, but you just got to do it. When you make that commitment to that little, you got to make that commitment and be willing to go for it. We've been at it for a while today, so this is where I'll leave the first episode. Next week, I have a couple more topics, and then, you know, as a whole, we'll just try. We'll try to come up with different programs that we all may be able to participate in. But we have to go back to the mindset of it takes a village. I remember coming up, if I did something bad in school or if I was acting up, I got a whooping. Now, I'm not saying like to whoop kids is the answer, but use that metaphorically, right? You have to be able to entrust other people's judgment, especially within your community. We all need somebody. We all need one another, matter of fact. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to let somebody in. We have this thing to where everything that happens in this house stays in this house. Again, I hear you, but in order to grow, you got to change some things. And that's one of them. You never know where your help's going to come from. You'll never get help if you don't ask for help. And sometimes asking for help, or in order to receive help, period, you got to explain your situation. Not necessarily to be gossipy or whatnot, but just to let people know, like, hey, you know, if I'm great at math and your kid's struggling at math, or there are multiple kids in my neighborhood that struggle with math, why isn't it that I can't take an hour out of my week? You know what I'm saying? Not even out of my day, but out of my week, and tutor somebody. We always talk about, oh, the children are the future and whatnot. Yeah, they are, you know? If you know how to braid hair, why not teach some of these young ladies out here that you see with their hair not looking up to par? Why not give them that skill? Really, really think about that. So until next week, arrivederci, Shazam. That's another episode. Again, I want to hear your opinion on these topics. I want to hear your opinion on this episode. You know, what do you want to hear from Big Cat Safe Space? Because we the people, and that's what this is all about. It's all about us. This ain't about entertainment. This ain't about making money. This is about altering lives for the better, spreading positivity. Remember, I got love for all who got love for all. Stay up. Reach out to us at bigcatsafespace@gmail.com. Big Cat Safe Space at Instagram, TikTok. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. And we're going to continue to try and do big things for the people, for the community. So until then, the next time, peace.